This recording is being made at Swananoa of the Walter Russell Foundation on Monday, 22nd September 1952. Those present in the room were Dr. Walter Russell, his wife, Mrs. Leo Russell, and myself, Andrew Wilson. So, entitled Secret of Light. This book I read in 1948, and after endeavoring to secure a copy, I met Mrs. Russell. From there I came on, I had the privilege of meeting Dr. Russell himself. I would like, on this occasion, to ask Dr. Russell a few questions on the subject of the discovery he made, which led to what we now call the discovery of atomic energy. In your book, you give various charts, which I understand will form the basis of an entirely new concept of chemistry. In these charts, you show certain elements which you have given various names to, which had not at that time been discovered. May I ask when it was that you first made these charts?
I made them in 1921.
In 1921?
Yes.
And were they published at that time?
No, I published them in 1926.
Did you by any chance copyright them or protect your name?
Yes, I did.
When was that?
In 1926.
In 1926. Well, it seems very strange to me that no credit has been given to you in any scientific journals I have come across for such wonderful discoveries as these charts indicate. May I ask, did you take any steps to inform the scientific world of your great discoveries?
Yes, I did. I published the charts and wrote an exhaustive work called the Universal One at that time and sent them to 800 scientists and the universities, the important universities of the country.
Did you get any acknowledgement at all from these various bodies?
No, excepting that I had sent them all registered and got the registered receipts or registered acknowledgements from practically all of them.
But it seems very strange to me that no reference has been made to the work you have done.
There has been a great deal of comment in the newspapers and a great deal of ridicule in many cases, and some upheld my works for quite a long time. But no scientist took serious notice of it because the chemical charts, for example, were too radical for them to accept. Hydrogen has always been the number one element of science. The science believes there's no other element prior to hydrogen. But this chart showed many elements, showed hydrogen as number 23 instead of number 1. And that to them was blasphemy. It was too astonishing and too radical for them to give serious thought to.
Did you take any steps to try and convince them that there were other elements behind hydrogen?
Yes, I did. I gave 2 lectures, one of which was attended by 300 scientists at the time that I was president of the Society of Arts and Sciences, and the result of that lecture set some of the great research laboratories into active research, one of them especially the Union Carbide Company, because they were tremendously interested in hydrogen, and other research laboratories, and they found what they called isotopes of hydrogen, which verified the fact of my statement. I had stated in the charts that hydrogen was not a single element. It was a complex of a whole octave. There was 7 instead of 1 in that octave. 7 elements instead of 1, and that if they would only investigate, they would find that they could take hydrogen apart and find all 7 of them. I also pointed out the absurdity of having a whole octave, as they have on the Mendeleev chart, with only 1 element in it, because that would be impossible and against the laws of nature. That there had to be a complete octave.
You say they call these isotopes of hydrogen. Am I right in saying that your view is that they are not isotopes, but separate elements, which, because of their misconception of the foundations of chemistry, have been unable to discover or plot as you have?
Yes, they are full-tone elements. The reason they call them isotopes is because in the Mendeleev chart of the elements, they have not named all of the elements, beginning with hydrogen from 1 to 92. Now, the next element, number 2, in the Mendeleev chart is helium, an inert gas, which follows an entire empty octave where hydrogen begins and should be filled up. Now, those so-called isotopes are full tones that should be in the octave of hydrogen as separate elements. They are not isotopes at all. In fact, there can be no isotopes of any chemical elements until after the octave in which silicon is at the amplitude. That is something which science has not yet recognized and is thoroughly shown in my chart.
One point I would like to get clear in my mind is this. Did the discovery of these isotopes lead to any new products, such as the hydrogen energy that can be taken from hydrogen?
Yes, they discovered heavy water by a combination of these isotopes, and heavy water has been an important discovery because it was used to produce atomic energy.
So you are really the one through whom the knowledge came that enabled the scientists to discover what they call isotopes, but you call full-tone elements, which enabled the world to have atomic energy.
Yes. But atomic energy would not have come had it not been for the isolation, very much later, of 2 elements which I showed in my charts and named uridium and urium. Those 2 elements followed the uranium series and shown in my charts very definitely, and in the charts I also stated that if these elements could be isolated, they would cause explosives of inconceivable magnitude.
Except from your book, I have not heard of these 2 elements, uridium and urium. How is that?
When they were isolated by science, they named them plutonium and neptunium, utterly ignoring the fact that they occupied the exact positions in the charts where I had placed them, and the fact that I had copyrighted them under the names of urium and uridium.
Well, these shouldn't be so renamed, surely, without consultation with you.
It certainly is not ethical to do such a thing as that. but I made no protest at the time. I believe that always truth will find its way, and I did not worry about the credit of it or the recognition, so long as the discovery had been made that would have been benefit to the world, knowing full well that whatever credit was due me would come in due time.
When did you first become aware that science was working on these new elements?
When I was at work upon my bust of President Roosevelt at the White House.
On a bust? Were you...
Yes, I was commissioned to make a bust of President Roosevelt for the government and also for Hyde Park.
I see.
And at that time, I was informed that Einstein and several other scientists who have had my charts, by the way, since 1926, had convinced Roosevelt that it was worthwhile, although it would cost a great deal of money, to investigate the possibilities of finding two very explosive elements which might be found beyond uranium, and that if they could be found, that would be possible to end the war by explosives too powerful for the enemy to resist.
Well, it seems to me, Dr. Russell, that because you were better known in the past for your capabilities as an artist, a sculptor, and as a philosopher, that the scientific circles of the world could not believe that anything you had to offer in the way of science would be of any real value. Personally, I feel that the real contributions to the welfare of humanity have come not directly through science, but rather through the poets and the philosophers right down the ages. And I do feel that if humanity, and particularly science, would today pay more attention to the fundamental truths which have throughout the ages been expressed by the poets and the philosophers and the artists, then this world would be freer from the horrors of war which face it in this atom age.
You are right. It is through the mystics and the geniuses of the world that the world owes all of its culture and knowledge. Scientists have applied that knowledge practically and through mechanical means, but the knowledge itself has come from, as Sir Oliver Lodge once said, through the philosopher, painter, poet, and saint of the world.
And do I take it from that, Doctor, that you feel that the contribution you have to make to the world has come from a higher source, and you are but the medium through which it has come to the world?
Yes, that is true. All of my knowledge has come to me cosmically. I have never gotten any knowledge whatsoever from textbooks. In fact, I have never read them. As a matter of fact, I made all my chemical charts before I knew the names of the elements in them. I made them from a knowledge, a complete sensing and knowledge of the rhythm of the universe, which is manifested in its heartbeat, its octave heartbeat. For this is a polarized universe that every genius can feel the heartbeat of, and he expresses it in the rhythms of his poetry or his music or his philosophy or what else you have. And that cosmic sense of the heartbeat of the universe is limited only to the geniuses and mystics of the world.
Your knowledge, then, has made it possible for the scientists of the world to produce atomic energy capable of destroying humanity. May I ask if you have any further contribution to make which would enable science to save the world from the effects of that terrific destruction which atomic energy would bring to the world?
Yes, I have. It was never intended by me that atomic energy should be used for the purposes it has been used. It was to be used for the easing of man's burden, rather than the destruction of mankind. But the basic knowledge that I still have to give to the world is that something which man has never known.
Can you give me any specific instances where your knowledge could have been put to use which would have helped mankind or saved mankind any suffering?
I certainly can. In your own country, for example, an impenetrable wall could have been built around it in towers 50 miles apart, through which any explosive could not possibly pass without being ignited and destroy the plane which carried it. I wanted to have that brought into effect and proposed it, but a science editor in New York said, if you try to do such a thing as that, you will have to go through the scientists higher up, who will take what you have and you will hear nothing of it and have no credit. I say, I do not care for credit so long as the effect is produced which would save England from the bombardment that it is getting and will get. But he said it would be ineffectual, for they will resist you out of jealousy. They will resist you and destroy you if necessary. So that you may just as well not try it. And I would advise you to publish nothing further in the future of any of your discoveries until you have absolutely completed them and can give it as a completed whole instead of in parts. And this is what I have done. But it is still a regrettable fact that England is unprotected against the bombing that it could have in the future as is in the past, and so unnecessarily.
I take it from what you say that World War II had already commenced. Is this correct?
Yes.
Was this before Pearl Harbor incident?
Oh, yes, before Pearl Harbor. It was before even England had begun to suffer terrifically from the bombs.
This was really at the beginning of the war?
Yes.
I see. Well, I saw a little of the blitzes that occurred on England and in Scotland, and I should like to know more of what you have in mind, because I should make it my most earnest endeavor and task to secure for all freedom-loving peoples protection from the horrors which I saw in the bombing of my own country in the last war. And to me it matters not which country suffers. It is humanity as a whole which I think we must endeavor to protect in the future from the fears which give rise to hatreds, and hatreds that bring forward war. If we have a means of protection in a time of danger, then it may steady the nerves of those who are in responsible positions, and so alter the whole cause of future wars, which have for so long wrought havoc throughout the world.
You are quite right, but that can only come about when science ultimately knows what light really is instead of what science thinks light to be. That knowledge is the one great step forward in human civilization. We will remake our human relations.
You believe, therefore, that the scientists are working from entirely false premises?
I certainly do. The fundamental principles upon which science works today are not in conformity with universal law. They are contrary to the basic principle of universal law, and the reason for that is that science is concerned only effect and knows only effect and not cause. The reason for this is because science has never connected the Creator with His creation. And because of that, the scientific fundamental principles have been concerned only with matter and motion, and not with the creative principle that brought matter and motion into being.
In your book, Doctor, The Secret of Life, with all the various charts and explanations which you give, you indicate that the basis of all matter is in light. And, well, how many people know really what light is? I think it's a lot of atoms in motion, and you contend that this is not so. Can you give some explanation of it?
Light is not matter in motion. Light is absolutely still. It is the fulcrum of the wave lever from which motion springs. But light is not the wave or the corpuscle that science believes it to be.
As I said at the outset, I had read, first of all, your book, The Secret of Light, but quite frankly, I found it to be rather beyond me, because I don't claim to be a scientist. And I wondered if you have since brought out any more simple explanation of the great truths which that book certainly contains.
Yes, I have. And when I brought out The Secret of Light, I've limited it to the comprehension of what I then thought people could take in. But since then, I was amazed to find that people not only understood more than I thought they would, but reached out for more knowledge. So, with the aid of my gifted wife, Leo, we wrote it out in great length in a 1 year's home study course of 48 lessons, 932 pages and 182 diagrams, which explain most explicitly what light is and what the fundamental principles of nature are, and in that work it connects the Creator and creation with His creation for the very first time in history. So far, again, for the first time in history, we can now say that God and His presence can be located and validated in every corpuscle of matter over which the Creator has control. We will have a different comprehension and understanding of God from now on through the study of this course of lessons.
Am I right in saying then that we have civilization, as we understand it, has reached the point where science and religion are about to meet?
Then they will marry, and religion should have taken up the expectant task of them by leading man to a comprehension of God. But it is my belief that it's a science responsibility, not that of religion, to validate God.
Well, how are we going to break down this prejudice which the scientists hold against your theories, which have, if I may say so, been proved correct insofar as atomic energy is concerned?
So far as I can see it, we have to break them down in the same way that Copernicus broke down the Ptolemy theory. It took him 15 years, however, in those early days of primitive communication, to convince the Ptolemyites that the sun was the center of the system instead of the earth. which overthrew entirely the Ptolemy concept of creation. Science, you know, of all ages, has a very closed mind, and especially today it is tradition-bound. But the students who are receiving our course of instruction are not tradition-bound, and they are gradually becoming transformed with this new knowledge, and bit by bit it will seep through until science itself will have to recognize it. That is the only way I can see it be done, by slow attrition of new knowledge replacing old.
Well, that may be true, but we feel that the world at the present moment is on the brink of almost a volcano. Well, some steps must be taken immediately to arrest, if possible, the present thinking, if that is what is causing the trouble, and convince the scientists, if not by one means, then by another, and if not the scientists, then those responsible for the administration of the various countries, that their whole understanding of the working of the laws governing this universe are false, and that if we continue to operate on the basis we have been doing in the past, then destruction would surely follow. Can anything be done even at this late hour, do you think?
Yes. If the scientists and the government officials who have control over them will set up a board composed of eminent scientists and perhaps one government official who will come here and thoroughly investigate the new knowledge which I have to give.
If they will do this, how long do you estimate it would take for the technicians to work out the details that would enable protective walls to be raised, and thereby prevent the freedom-loving peoples from suffering the destruction of which so many countries suffered during World War II?
Provided the scientists who come to me are sufficiently open-minded to receive the new knowledge and, to them, the new principles, I believe the principles could be demonstrated in small-scale models within a few months after their acceptance and comprehension of the new knowledge.
Well, Dr. Russell, this is the most encouraging piece of information which I have heard for a very long time. I have a feeling that this interview, which to me is the most memorable one which I feel greatly privileged to take part in, will be the setting out point from which I shall go forward, seeking men of vision who have the welfare of all mankind in their hearts and the determination to rid the world of the tyranny of fear and hatred which has gripped it for so many thousands of years. I feel the world has a great future if only it will turn to the principles which were put forward from another high mountain 2,000 odd years ago. And from this mountain in Virginia, in the New World, I feel that this message which you, Dr. Russell, have given me will revivify the ideals and inspire mankind throughout the world, and to turn over a new leaf and endeavor to seek the happiness and welfare of mankind rather than his destruction. Is not that your thought also, Doctor?
Yes, it is. Until the scientist can at last know God and know how to relate the created to his creation, he will continue to suffer the agonies which are the fruits of his ignorance.